Cooper Family Diner, Christmas Eve. A family is celebrating a lie. The neon sign buzzes against the falling snow, a blue electric heartbeat in the dead of winter, while inside the air smells of scorched coffee and 30 years of secrets. I am Anna Cooper, and I am watching my parents smile at a town they have fooled, knowing that by sunrise the illusion will finally shatter. The warmth of the diner is a trap, the gifts are a calculation. And as I sit in the back booth, I realize they don't want a daughter, they want a scapegoat. But they forgot that scapegoats eventually learn to fight back. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel. We always appreciate the time you spent here with us. Here is my story. The Cooper family diner always smelled the same on Christmas Eve, like scorched coffee pine needles and the heavy, greasy comfort of a lie that had been cooking for 30 years. To everyone else in our small town, this place was a sanctuary. It was America in a snow globe, complete with a faded flag mural behind the counter, black and white photos of local veterans lining the walls, and a Support Local Heroes corkboard that was currently overflowing with holiday cards. My parents, Mark and Linda, were the masters of this ceremony. They moved through the crowded booths, with the practiced grace of politicians pouring refills and accepting gratitude, playing the part of the resilient blue-collar saints who had weathered every storm. But I sat in the back booth, nursing a lukewarm mug of tea, watching them with the heavy eyes of a daughter who knew exactly what the storm was actually costing. By the time the pumpkin pie hit the table, I already knew my parents had chosen which child they wanted to keep and which one they wanted to erase. I was 28 years old, a registered nurse who had spent the last 12 hours on my feet in the ER, stitching up drunk drivers and holding the hands of terrified grandmothers. My boyfriend Josh had begged me to skip the family dinner this year. He was a mechanic, a man who understood how things worked and how things broke. He had told me just that morning while wiping grease from his hands that I couldn't keep setting myself on fire just to keep my family warm. But I didn't listen. I never listened. I had been raised on a steady diet of family first, and we take care of our own. That philosophy was the bedrock of the Cooper name, or at least I thought it was. From my vantage point in the booth, I watched my father clap a hand on the shoulder of Mr. Henderson, the town mayor. "We're barely hanging on Bob, but we never give up," my dad said, his voice thick with a theatrical kind of exhaustion. "Prices are up, margins are down, but we do it for the community." My mother stood beside him, wiping her hands on her apron, looking appropriately weary and noble. The town ate it up. They loved the narrative of the struggling local business fighting the good fight. What they didn't know, what no one knew except for me and my bank account, was that the diner hadn't paid its own electric bill in 6 months. I had. I wasn't just their daughter. I was their parachute. For 3 years, ever since the pandemic panic set in, I had been the silent partner in their survival. It started small, a few $100s for a repair here, a grocery run there. But then it became the mortgage, then the business loans. I remembered the first time they asked, the image seared into my brain like a burn. My mother had been crying in the walk-in freezer, her breath coming in white puffs, and my dad had looked at the floor, muttering about how they would never ask if they weren't desperate. I had stepped up because that's what the responsible child does. I became the invisible IV drip keeping the Cooper family diner alive. But tonight the IV drip was being ignored for the show pony. My younger brother Logan breezed through the front door, bringing a gust of snowy air with him. At 22, Logan was everything I wasn't: charismatic, loud, and expensive. He wore a crisp new jacket that cost more than my entire nursing uniform, and he was holding a high-end vlogging camera, filming himself as he walked in. "What is up, guys? We are live at the best spot in town, keeping the tradition alive," he shouted to his imaginary audience. My parents' faces lit up instantly. The weariness vanished. My dad rushed over to hug him, and my mom beamed, telling the customers, "That's our Logan. He's so creative. He's going places." I looked down at my scuffed work shoes. No one mentioned that I had worked a double shift to cover the transfer I sent them last week. No one mentioned that Logan's creativity was currently being funded by the money I was supposed to be saving for a house. I watched as a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, leaned over to my mom. "You Coopers are the heart of this town," she cooed. "You raise such good kids." My mom smiled, her eyes fixed on Logan as he set up a tripod on the counter. "We're blessed," she said. "Logan is really taking the brand to the next level." I was an afterthought, the practical accessory in the corner. "Anna, honey." My mom finally waved me over as the crowd started to thin out. "You're staying at the house tonight, right? We want everyone together for Christmas morning. Big surprises. We can't have the family apart." Her smile was tight, insistent. I wanted to say no. I wanted to go back to my quiet apartment and sleep for a week. But the guilt was a reflex I couldn't control. "Okay," I said. "I'll stay." That decision was the mistake that would unravel my life. Hours later, I was lying awake in my childhood bedroom, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars still stuck to the ceiling from when I was 10. The house was old. The vents carried sound like a tin can telephone, and I could hear the murmur of voices from the kitchen below. I rolled over, trying to ignore it, until I heard my name. "She'll be fine, Mark." My mother's voice drifted up, low but sharp. "She's strong. She's used to handling things." "It's a lot of money," my father mumbled. "She owes us." My mother snapped, the sweetness she displayed at the diner completely gone. "After everything we sacrificed for her, she has that steady job. She can absorb the hit. We can't let her threaten what we've built with Logan. He's the future." The word "threaten" made my blood run cold. I lay frozen in the dark, the festive flannel sheets suddenly feeling like a shroud. I didn't know exactly what they were planning, but the tone of their voices wasn't the warm, grateful tone of parents talking about a daughter who saved them. It was the cold, calculating tone of generals discussing collateral damage. I didn't know it then, but by sunrise I'd finally understand what my family really thought I was, and exactly what they were willing to do to erase me. To understand why the voices in the kitchen that Christmas Eve cut me so deep, you have to understand that the knife had been slowly twisting in my back for 3 years. It hadn't started with malice. It started with desperation. I remembered the exact moment the dynamic shifted. It was a Tuesday night 3 years prior, and the diner was on the brink of closure. My mother sat at the kitchen table, a stack of red-inked notices spread out like a losing hand of poker. Her voice shook as she told me they might lose the house, the business, the legacy, everything they claimed to have built for us. My father, usually the stoic pillar of the community, looked defeated. "You're the only one stable right now, Anna," he had said, refusing to meet my eyes. "We'd never ask if we weren't drowning." I didn't hesitate. I was the eldest daughter. Saying yes was my factory setting. I agreed to help until things smoothed out. But temporary is a dangerous word in a family of takers. Within months, my financial sacrifice had been automated. I set up direct transfers for the mortgage, the diner's utility bills, and the vendor costs. I stopped looking at my savings account because seeing the number drop made my stomach turn. I started skipping vacations with my nursing school friends. I drove a Honda with a windshield cracked right down the middle because I couldn't justify the deductible when the diner needed a new grease trap. I told myself I was a good daughter. I told myself I was helping. But deep down, I started to feel less like a person and more like an invisible IV drip draining my own life force to keep their dream alive. The twisted part was watching where that life force actually went. You would think for a business claiming to be destitute that things would look lean. But the diner was getting little upgrades constantly. First, it was the new neon signage that buzzed in electric blue above the entrance. Then a renovation of the bar area with reclaimed wood that cost a fortune. My parents claimed it was necessary to attract customers, to spend money to make money. And then there was Logan. While I was eating vending machine crackers for dinner between 12-hour shifts, Logan was thriving. His image was polished to a high sheen. He posted professional photos on Instagram, wearing designer flannels, leaning against the counter with a new espresso machine that I had essentially paid for. He launched a new logo, Cooper's All-American, featuring a stylized sketch of his own face. The disparity wasn't just financial, it was humiliating. I remember a 4th of July cookout the summer before everything imploded. The whole town seemed to be in our backyard. Relatives and neighbors were swarming around Logan, praising his vision for the diner's social media presence. "You're going to put this town on the map, kid," someone shouted. I was standing by the cooler refilling drinks wearing sneakers that were worn through at the heel. A cousin joked, "You'll be rich off his ideas someday, Anna. You're lucky he's so ambitious." My mother laughed, a sound that grated on my nerves. "Oh, Anna's just practical," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "Logan's the star. Anna is our safety net." Safety net. The phrase stuck in my throat like a bone. A safety net is something you step on. It's something you use to catch you when you fall, but you don't admire it. You don't love it. You just expect it to be there. That expectation turned into a legal trap 6 months later. My parents ambushed me one evening with a stack of thick documents. It was a refinancing agreement for both the house and the diner. "It's just to lower the interest rates," my dad insisted, pushing a pen into my hand. "We just need a co-signer because our credit took a hit during the pandemic. It's just a formality, Anna. Your signature doesn't change anything. We would never put you at risk." I looked at their desperate faces, and the guilt welled up, the weaponized history of their sacrifices for me. If I hesitated, I was ungrateful. If I asked questions, I was selfish. So I signed. I signed my name next to theirs, legally tying my financial future to a sinking ship, believing I was keeping them afloat. But the water kept rising. Anytime I tried to pull back, the emotional manipulation was swift and brutal. "After all we've done for you," my mother would say, her eyes welling with instant tears, "you wouldn't be a nurse without our support. Logan needs a chance to shine. You're already stable." They framed my stability, which I earned through sleepless nights and hard labor, as a privilege they had granted me, and therefore a debt I owed them. The unease grew into a knot of dread in my chest. I started tracking the total I had sent them. It was climbing past $40,000. I kept telling myself it was for the mortgage for the supplies. Until the notification came through. It was late one night a few weeks before Christmas. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A banking alert for the diner's business account, which I had access to but rarely checked. A massive payment had cleared. I frowned, unlocking the screen, expecting to see a payment to a food distributor or maybe the electric company. But the vendor name wasn't a utility, it was a dealership, Metro Ford and Off-Road. I stared at the screen, the blue light illuminating the dark room. That was the first time the blindfold slipped. That was the first time I wondered if my parents were actually struggling, or if they were just making sure I stayed small enough and poor enough that they could build something bigger without me. I didn't know it then, but that payment wasn't for a delivery van. It was the down payment on my replacement. Christmas morning arrived with a deceptive cinematic perfection. Snow dusted the window panes, the scent of cinnamon and strong coffee filled the living room, and the tree lights reflected off the old glass ornaments we had hung every year since I was a toddler. It was the kind of morning that usually made me forgive everything. My parents were vibrating with an energy I hadn't seen in years, giddy, almost manic. Logan was pacing the floor, buzzing with caffeine and adrenaline, dropping heavy-handed hints about this being the year everything finally pays off. I sat on the sofa, clutching my mug, telling myself to just get through it. I wasn't expecting much, a scarf maybe. Scarf? A gift card. I just wanted peace. I wanted the knot in my stomach to loosen. The ceremony began with the main event. My father stood up, cleared his throat, and handed Logan a small, heavy box wrapped in gold paper. "For the future of the business," Dad said, his voice thick with pride. "You're the face of Cooper's All-American now, son. You need to look the part." Logan tore into the paper and pulled out a key fob. It wasn't for a sedan or a delivery van. It was heavy, modern, and expensive. "No way," Logan breathed. "No way." We all followed him as he sprinted to the front door and threw it open. Parked in the driveway, gleaming like a black diamond against the white snow, was a brand new custom Ford Raptor. It was lifted, aggressive, and terrifyingly expensive. On the driver's side door, a professional decal displayed the new diner logo, Logan's face. My parents stood on the porch beaming. "It's marketing Anna," my mom chirped, noticing my stunned silence. "We have to project success to attract success. It's a tax write-off." I did the math instantly. Between the lift kit, the custom wheels, and the base price, that truck cost more than I made in 8 months. It was a monstrosity of debt sitting on 4 wheels. We went back inside, the cold air biting at my skin, but the real chill was waiting for me under the tree. There were only 2 small packages left. They were for me. My dad sat back in his recliner watching Logan fondle the truck keys, barely glancing my way. I opened the first package. It was a paperback book. I turned it over in my hands. "Accepting Your Role, Finding Peace in a Support System." I stared at the cover, feeling a flush of heat creep up my neck. "Open the other one," my mom urged. She was smiling, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the tight, pointed smile of someone delivering a lesson. I unwrapped the second gift. It was a sweater, a beige, shapeless thing. As I unfolded it, I saw the tag still plastic tied to the collar. It was a color-coded tag from the local thrift store, price $3.99. Then I saw the stain, a dark smudge of old coffee or oil on the cuff. I looked up, speechless. "You don't need much, Anna," my mom said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweetness. "You're the grounded one. You've always been so utilitarian. We thought it suited you. Be humble. Everyone gets what they deserve in this family." The silence that followed was shattered by Logan. He laughed, a sharp, barking sound. "Relax, Anna. You're the one who loves to sacrifice, right? It's basically your personality at this point." My father chuckled along, nodding as if Logan had made a brilliant observation. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap like a branch breaking. It was a quiet, structural failure, like a foundation finally giving way. They didn't just see me as a helper. They saw me as a utility, an appliance that didn't need maintenance, only usage. "How?" I asked, my voice steady but low. "How can you afford an $80,000 truck if you're behind on the mortgage, if I'm paying the electric bill?" The room went deadly quiet. My parents exchanged a look. "It's handled," my mother said dismissively. "We've been smart. Besides, you're on the refinancing papers, Anna, so technically it's all in the family. Your credit helped, sure, but Logan is the one who will make it pay off." That was the knife. They had used my credit score, the one I protected, the one I built, to finance a toy for their golden child, while gifting me a stained sweater. "I've given you over $40,000, I said, standing up. "I have sacrificed my life for 3 years. "Oh, stop it!" My mother slammed her hand on the armrest. "You ungrateful girl. You think you're better than us because you got a degree? We built this life. We made you. Don't act like we owe you anything just because you pitched in. You're trying to ruin this morning because you're jealous." They were waiting for me to cry. They were waiting for me to apologize, to shrink back into the box they had built for me. But I didn't cry. A strange, eerie calm washed over me. I smiled, and it felt like the first honest expression I had worn in years. "You're right," I said softly. "Everyone gets what they deserve." I turned and walked up the stairs to my childhood bedroom. I didn't pack a bag yet. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled out the folder I had kept hidden, the bank statements, the transfer records, and the digital copy of the refinance agreement. If they wanted to erase me so badly, I was finally ready to see what happened when I erased myself from their life and took my name off everything they'd built on my back. That night, while my family slept off the high of their performative success and the thrill of the new truck, I was awake, dismantling their lives with the precision of a surgeon. I didn't scream, and I didn't throw things. Instead, I sat at my childhood desk, the glow of my laptop screen illuminating the room, and I began to download everything. I saved 3 years of bank statements. I took screenshots of the Venmo transactions where I had sent thousands labeled emergency, the mortgage, and diner payroll. I downloaded the entire text history where my mother begged, cried, and promised to pay me back the second we get on our feet. Then I opened the digital copy of the refinancing agreement, the one that had shackled my credit to their debt, and I drafted a formal letter to the bank and the lending agency. The language was cold, professional, and final. As a cosigner who had provided the primary income verification for the loan, I was formally notifying them of a material change in financial circumstances. I was withdrawing my support. I was requesting a full audit of the account structure. I hit send on the emails at 12:45 a.m. At 1:00 a.m., I packed a single duffel bag. I didn't take much, just my uniform, my laptop, and the few things I had bought with my own money. I walked downstairs in the dark, the floorboards creaking softly under my feet. In the kitchen, the moonlight hit the counter where I had left my house key. I didn't write a note. I just set the key down next to the dirty dishes they expected me to wash in the morning. I wasn't running away. I was walking out of a burning room before the roof collapsed. I drove to Josh's apartment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally cutting the cord. When he opened the door half asleep and confused, he didn't ask questions. He just pulled me inside. The next morning, Christmas Day, while my parents were likely waiting for me to come downstairs and make breakfast, I detonated the bomb. I opened my social media apps. I had drafted the post the night before, but I hadn't posted it. Now, with the morning sun hitting my face, I pressed post. It was simple. 3 photos. The first was a high-resolution shot of the stained sweater with the $3.99 thrift store tag clearly visible. The second was a screenshot of my banking dashboard, a summary showing total outgoing transfers to Mom and Dad Mortgage Diner, totaling exactly $52,300 over 3 years. The third was a cropped image of the refinance document showing my signature next to the loan amount that paid for their lifestyle. The caption was brief. 3 years, over $50,000 given to keep the family business alive. Tonight, they bought a customized truck for my brother, gave me a stained thrift store sweater, and told me to be humble. And today I stopped paying. Today I stopped letting my own parents erase me. The fallout was instantaneous. Within 10 minutes, my phone began to buzz. Then it began to vibrate continuously, dancing across the table like a nervous insect. Calls from Mom, Dad, and Logan flooded in back to back. I didn't answer. I watched the names flash on the screen, feeling a strange detachment. Then came the texts. Accusations of destroying the family, of betraying our blood, of making us look like fools in front of the whole town. I screenshotted the worst ones, the threats, the gaslighting, and then I turned the phone off. But I couldn't turn off the town. In a community this small, silence is impossible. By noon, the post had been shared hundreds of times. The heart of the town narrative my parents had carefully constructed began to fracture. People were divided, arguing in the comments section and in group chats. Some called me courageous, validating what they had long suspected, that the Coopers were living a lie. "She's been carrying them for years," one neighbor wrote. "I saw her car at the hospital every single weekend while Logan was partying." Others, the die-hard loyalists, called me a traitor. "You don't do that to family," they typed. "Private matters should stay private." But the opinion court didn't matter as much as the financial one. Because I had alerted the bank, and because the town was buzzing, the illusion of their solvency evaporated. I learned later that the bank called my parents that very afternoon. With my income removed from the equation, and my formal complaint filed, the loan for the truck and the refinancing deal triggered an immediate review. The diner's accounts were frozen pending an audit. A major food supplier, seeing the social media storm and realizing the rich family was actually insolvent, refused to deliver the week's order without cash up front. The cracks were visible now. The Coopers weren't victims of the economy. They were financial vampires who had run out of blood. The sun began to set on what was supposed to be their glorious Christmas victory. I was sitting on Josh's balcony when I turned my phone back on. There was one final message from my mother. It wasn't an apology. It was a declaration of war. If you don't fix this, Anna, if you don't take that post down and tell everyone you lied, we will tell everyone you abandoned us. We will ruin you. I looked at the words glowing white on the screen. A year ago, that text would have sent me into a panic attack. I would have rushed over, checkbook in hand, begging for forgiveness. But now I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest. It was a dark, dry laugh, but it was mine. For the first time, their threats didn't threaten me. They only proved what I had finally accepted. They never loved me. They loved what I could do for them. And they were about to find out that without me, they couldn't do anything at all. The collapse of the Cooper Empire didn't happen with a bang, but with a long, agonizing whimper that the whole town watched in slow motion. Over the next few months, the America in a Snow Globe facade that my parents had polished for 30 years began to crack and peel. Without my monthly infusions of cash to hide the rot, the diner lost its artificial sparkle. The fresh flowers vanished from the tables, the Support Local Heroes board went unupdated, and the regulars, the ones who actually paid attention, began to drift away. They could smell the desperation in the air, sharper than the smell of burnt coffee. The most satisfying moment, the one that finally punctured the balloon of Logan's ego, happened in broad daylight. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't there to see it, but half the town was, and the video circulated in group chats for weeks. The repo man had come for the custom Ford Raptor. Logan, in a display of delusional bravado, had actually tried to film himself standing in front of the tow truck, telling his followers that it was a misunderstanding and that he was upgrading his fleet. But the camera caught the reality: the grim-faced driver hooking the chains to the bumper, the repo order slapped on the windshield, and the look of sheer naked panic in Logan's eyes when the truck was lifted into the air. He deleted the video an hour later, but the internet is forever. The symbol of their future was towed away to an impound lot in the next county. Shortly after, the notices appeared on the diner door. First, it was limited hours due to staffing, then closed for maintenance. Finally, the windows went dark and the sign came down. The Coopers' All-American legacy ended not with a parade but with a padlock. My parents tried to control the narrative until the bitter end. They told anyone who would listen that I had abandoned them, that I was cold, heartless, and money-obsessed. They spun a story where I was the villain who had pulled the rug out from under a struggling family for no reason other than spite. But the truth is a stubborn thing, and it doesn't need a PR manager. The public records of the foreclosure, the vendor lawsuits, and the repossessions told a story that no amount of tears from my mother could drown out. Some relatives took their side, blocking me on social media and calling me a traitor. I didn't block them back. I didn't try to defend myself. I realized that the truth didn't need me to babysit it. Let them talk. I was too busy living. For the first time in my adult life, my paycheck belonged to me. It was a dizzying, intoxicating sensation. I aggressively paid down my student loans, watching the balance shrink instead of stalling. I moved out of Josh's place and into my own apartment, a small, bright space with a balcony that overlooked the river and the city skyline. It wasn't big, but the walls were thick, and when I closed the door, the silence was mine. I bought a reliable car with a windshield that wasn't cracked. I started therapy, sitting on a beige couch once a week to unlearn the deeply ingrained belief that my only value as a human being came from what I could sacrifice for others. And the love I found wasn't transactional. Josh stayed. He didn't try to fix me or manage the fallout. He just cooked dinner when I came home from a 12-hour shift and listened when I needed to talk. I built a chosen family piece by piece. My coworker's a neighbor who brought me casseroles just because she made too much a book club that cared if I showed up, not if I paid for the snacks. These people didn't see me as a safety net or an ATM. They saw Anna. One afternoon, about 6 months after the explosion, I found myself driving past the old diner building. I hadn't planned to. The detour was subconscious. The building sat empty, a hollow shell of red brick and dusty glass. The parking lot where Logan used to pose with his truck was cracked and overgrown with weeds. I pulled over and idled there for a moment, waiting for the wave of grief or nostalgia to hit me. I waited to feel the phantom pain of the family I had lost. But nothing came. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt a profound, quiet distance. I looked at the dark windows and realized that some families don't break. They just reveal themselves. My parents had revealed that they would rather let their daughter drown than admit they couldn't swim. Logan had revealed he would rather be famous than decent. They would likely never apologize. They would go to their graves believing they were the victims of my cruelty. I drove away, leaving the ghost of the diner in the rearview mirror. That night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights shimmer on the river. I thought about the girl who had signed that first transfer 3 years ago out of guilt and duty. I thought about the woman who had walked out into the snow on Christmas morning. My parents had lost the diner, the truck, the house, and the story they told the town. They lost the daughter they tried to erase. But as I took a deep breath of the cool night air, I realized I hadn't lost anything. I stopped letting anyone ambush my life, stopped letting my own parents threaten my peace, and I finally understood my freedom was the only revenge I ever needed. That brings us to the end of Anna's journey. It serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply walk away from the people who are supposed to protect you. What did you think of her decision to expose everything publicly? Let us know down below. We read every single comment of your thoughts. If you enjoyed this narration, please consider subscribing. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Hour. We'll see you next time.